A reading from the book of the prophet Isaiah. For Zion's sake, I will not be silent. For Jerusalem's sake, I will not be quiet, until her vindication shines forth like the dawn, and her victory like a burning torch. Nations shall behold your vindication, and all the kings your glory. You shall be called by a new name, pronounced by the mouth of the Lord. You shall be a glorious crown in the hand of the Lord, a royal diadem held by your God. No more shall people call you forsaken, or your land desolate, but you shall be called my delight, and your land espoused. For the Lord delights in you and makes your land his spouse. As a young man marries a virgin, your builder shall marry you. And as a bridegroom rejoices in his bride, so shall your God rejoice in you. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
A reading from the first letter of St. Paul to the Corinthians. Brothers and sisters, there are different kinds of spiritual gifts, but the same Spirit. There are different forms of service, but the same Lord. There are different workings, but the same God who produces all of them in everyone. To each individual, the manifestation of the Spirit is given for some benefit. To one is given through the Spirit the expression of wisdom. To another, the expression of knowledge according to the same Spirit. To another, faith by the same Spirit. To another, gifts of healing by this one Spirit. To another, mighty deeds. To another, prophecy. To another, discernment of spirits. To another, varieties of tongues. To another, interpretation of tongues. But one and the same Spirit produces all of these, distributing them individually to each person as he wishes. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. There was a wedding at Cana in Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples were also invited to the wedding. When the wine ran short, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." Jesus said to her, "Woman, how does your concern affect me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servers, "Do whatever he tells you." Now there were 6 stone water jars there for Jewish ceremonial washings, each holding 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus told them, "Fill the jars with water." So they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, draw some out now and take it to the head waiter." So they took it. And when the head waiter tested the water that had become wine without knowing where it came from, although the servers who had drawn the water knew, the head waiter called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves good wine first, and then when people have drunk freely an inferior one, but you kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this at the beginning of his signs at Cana in Galilee, and so revealed his glory, and his disciples began to believe in him. The Gospel of the Lord. I know sometimes people wonder, why is it that Monmouth County is the holiest county in the state of New Jersey out of the 21 counties? And part of the reason why Monmouth County is so holy, because I don't know if you know it, but we have the world's most holy monastery down there, hidden in the Pine Barrens, of course. It's a monastery that's so holy that the people who live there only get to talk once every 10 years. And they only get 2 words, right? And in this monastery where you only get 2 words every 10 years, one of the new guys came in, and after 10 years, the superior came and said to him, "So how's it going?" And the guy said, "Hard bed." So the superior went away and came back at the end of 20 years. And he said to him, "How's it going?" And the guy said, "Cold food." Okay. So the superior went away and came back at the end of 30 years and said to the guy, "How's it going?" And the guy said, "I quit." And the superior said, "That's no surprise. You've done nothing but complain for the last 30 years, huh?" Fallacy of composition, over-expanding, over-interpreting a couple of lines, like 2 words every 10 years. But if we were just to focus on the words that we've heard from Jesus since the since the second week in December, I think it is, was the last time we heard from Jesus. And then we hear from him the last time we heard from him, before this weekend. The last time we heard from him was during the finding in the temple. And then we hear from him today. And in these last 5 weeks, those are the only times that we've heard from him, in the temple and today. And if you were just to base your understanding of Jesus on those 2 experiences of Jesus, what would you think of him? Right? Kind of a gnarly sort of person. The only thing we hear from him are these sort of crusty responses to his mother. Remember in the finding in the temple when Mary went down with Joseph and said, "Son, do you not know that we've been looking for you for 3 days?" And what was it that Jesus said to his mother? What did she say? What did he say to her? Right. "Why have you been looking for me? Why have you been looking for me?" That doesn't sound like something you'd say, like, "Mom, I'm sorry. I knew I messed up your..." No. "Why have you been looking for me?" And then today, when Mary says to him, they're running out of wine, and notice the 2 parts. What does Jesus say back to his mother? How does he address her? Does he say, "Mom"? What's the form of address? "Woman," right? And then what does he say? The concern. How is this a concern of mine? Now, if we would have just listened to Jesus on those 2 lines alone, just like the guy listened to the monk every 10 years for 2 words, if we were to listen to Jesus on those 2 words alone, we'd think, wow, Mary had to put up with a lot. And there are ways in which we can peel this onion and look at it more closely, but either way, I want you to take that look at it. Mary did have to put up with something here. Just focusing on today, not the response when Mary found Jesus in the temple, but just today, woman, how does this concern of yours affect me? Why is this concern of yours a concern of mine? The first thing is, woman, that's quite a pointer. Now, moms in the congregation today, I'd ask you, if you said, "Would you please go upstairs and clean your room?" I've asked you 7 times, and your child said, "Woman," that'd go over real big, right? Right? No matter how we try to translate it, and St. John Chrysostom, way back in the patristic period of the church, he tried to spin it in a different way to say it was a form of really polite address, like "lady" or "my lady." Well, no one agrees with him. It sounds like what it is, woman. It's kind of a distancing sort of a thing. Might not be as harsh when Jesus spoke it as it is in our English translation today, but still, it's a distancing word. It doesn't say "dear mom" or, "old mom" or something like that. It's a distancing word. And then what does he say? How is this concern of you? What is it that you have to do with us? Or what is it that I have to do with you? Or how is this a concern of mine? That's a variation on a phrase that appears a couple of times in the Bible. As best we can tell, it appears 5 times in the Old Testament in different forms and 3 times in the New Testament. And every time it appears in the Old Testament, it's a form of distancing. It's, listen, you have your concerns, I have my concerns, and never the 2 shall meet, right? You have your issues, I have my issues. We're not concerned about the same stuff, so kind of stay away, would you? Could you go away a little while, right? It's a distancing phrase. It's not a come close phrase. It's not a term of endearment or affection. Every time you see it in the Old Testament, I think it's Hosea, 2 Kings, Chronicles, I forget the other 2. In the New Testament, there's one thing that happens over and over where someone uses that phrase, "What have you to do with us?" We just heard it this week, one day in daily mass. Who is it that says to Jesus, "What have you to do with us?" Only one creature. Satan. The only time you hear it, and you hear it 3 times in the Synoptic Gospels, is, "What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us?" It was one of the readings this week. So listen, the way that you speak that to Jesus, if you're the devil, it doesn't mean, let's be best friends. It means, I want nothing to do with you, and I want you to want nothing to do with me. So when we take those words that Jesus said to Mary, they're a little bit harsh. And every time we find them in the scripture, to varying degrees, somebody once tried to make an argument that when you hear it in 2 Chronicles, that it's a little bit more benevolent. It's a weak argument. The overwhelming bit of evidence says, listen, the people who really know this stuff and the people who really prayed on it, it was kind of a rough thing to say to his mother, right? "Woman, how is this concern of yours a matter for me?" That's the first part of the question. The second part of the question then is, so what did Mary do then? Did Mary pick up her staff and walk out of the wedding feast? Did she have something? Did she reprimand him? Did she do anything? What did she do? Immediately after he said, what concern is this to me? What did she do? She said something. Who did she say something to? The waiters. And what did she say? Do whatever he tells you. Right? Do whatever he tells you. So that sounds like a moment where there was some definite, wow, what do you know about this? Kind of stuff between Jesus and Mary. Nothing sinful, because she's Mary and he's Jesus, so there's no sin involved in it. It just sounds like the ordinary course of human relations. And there's been a lot of really holy people, especially back, well, it doesn't make any difference. There have been a lot of holy people who've prayed on this stuff and have interpreted it in different ways about what Jesus was doing in that moment and what Mary was doing in that moment. But here's what we do know, just based on this alone. She got back on her horse, right? She got back on her horse. So it was a moment of friction. If you were in that situation, of course it would have been a moment of confusion of, wow, I don't quite understand this. In the same way that when Simeon approached her and when Anna approached her in the temple and when the angels appeared, she has to stop and say, I don't get this sometimes. When the baby was born, as the baby was born, who's supposed to be the Son of God, right? That's what she was told. This doesn't look like the birth of the Son of God. She keeps getting back on her horse over and over and over again. When her relationship with God is going to confuse her, she acknowledges it seems to me, and she gets back on the horse. She keeps doing the things that you do when you're in a state of real conviction. Notice how many times she does that over and over and over again, when her experience as the mother of God has to be a little bit confusing and a little bit jarring and perhaps even a little bit disappointing in the moment. She keeps getting back on her horse. And after Calvary, we have every reason to believe she did the same thing. She gets back on her horse, that horse of faith. That story of getting back on your horse, right? If you try to whitewash what happened in that conversation, you don't have to see her getting back on her horse because it was just a matter of, oh, everything's fine all the time. Well, but if we try to get realistic about it, she did get back on a horse. You know, that's the old saying goes. If you get thrown off the horse, the first thing you do is got to get back on it, right? And so in that moment of spiritual desolation, she acts as if she's in consolation. For those of you who have made or are making the exercises, well, those of you making it, you'll come across that next week in the 6th rule for the discernment of spirits, where St. Ignatius says, listen, in times of desolation, your first rule is to hang on and act like you're in consolation. It's not the right time to make any changes. You got to get back on your horse as soon as you can. The story of the first reading today is people who'd been exiled and tossed out of Jerusalem and off, and now they're coming back after many, many years in Babylon. They're getting back on their horse. God is giving them the opportunity to get back on their horse, and they seize it, and they take advantage of it, and they come back to Jerusalem. Here's the funny thing about the way it works. The horses keep showing up, right? God keeps giving us these opportunities after these moments or these experiences of desolation or these experiences of great loss. You've heard it before, I'll say it again. I am pretty darn sure that God doesn't make bad things happen to people. Bad things happen and God gives us the grace to keep moving. And one of those ways in which God gives us the grace to keep moving is by letting the horse show up. God gives us those opportunities to pray, to serve, and to build community. Even when we're coming out of a place of, God, what's up, man? What's going on here? I don't understand it. I thought the deal was this, and now it seems to be that. And I don't know. In my own experience, the opportunity to get back on the horse, overwhelming. And these reflections on the wedding feast at Cana this week have been pretty remarkable. One of the best horses that ever showed up, a horse for me to get back on, was Manny. It's all your fault. It is the night that Manny was brought into the church, right? That Easter vigil 4 years ago, 2014. Or was it 15? No, 2015. It'll be 4 years this year, 2015. And I've mentioned to some of you, it was my first Easter here. There's a lot going on at Easter, much to consider. And it was about 20 minutes before Mass started, and I was just going over some final stuff and making sure the flamethrowers were ready to go out in the parking lot and whatnot. And I still had my phone with me, because I needed to have my phone with me. And I was about to go and put it away. And just before I was about to turn it off, my nephew called to tell me that my brother had just died, right? And that's a lot. That's a lot. In human terms, that's a lot. He was my favorite brother. Somebody was saying, is there any pattern to the way in which your siblings are dying? I said, yeah, here's the pattern. They're dying in the order in which I adore them. Judith first, Peter second. Some of them are bound to live forever. As you know, if you come from a large family, right? But right then, so it was time to, okay, just stiff upper lip, that Midwest thing. Just deal with it. Come on, go. The Easter Vigil has to happen. What are you going to do? But only in recent months have I seen that as like this amazing, because Peter's death, while not as soul-deep disturbing to me as Judith's death and all that, it still has a lot of unanswered questions with me in my walk with God. And so that was a big deal. And I'm seeing, as I look back on it now, this great, big, magnificent white horse showed up. And what was that horse? That horse was the opportunity to baptize Manny, to celebrate the sacraments here at Easter, to be able to preach the word of God, right? Thank God that, and I'm not saying anything about God makes stuff happen at certain times, or God, none of that. It just always seems that the horse shows up in those moments when you feel like you've gotten knocked off. And it's time to get back on the horse, just like Our Lady did. Friends, you've done that. You've had that experience of Mary at Cana. And I would just ask you to notice it. You've had those experiences of desolation when Jesus' love seemed more like a theory than a reality. You've had those experiences of desolation when it was really, really hard to pray, to serve, or to build community for the glory of God. You just maybe felt like you were going through the motions. That there was some loss, some setback, interior, exterior, whatever it was, and you felt like you got knocked off your faith horse. And lo and behold, boom. God sends a horse for you to get back on. In the form of, God inviting you to pray and to pray with other people. God inviting you to serve for the glory of God. God inviting you to help build up the community. God inviting you to love as if it were easy to do. So when's it been? Can you name one moment at least when God sent the horse and you had the good grace to get back on? God said, here's your opportunity. And even if it doesn't feel like it's coming from the depths of your being, do it. Do it. Do it. Get back on the horse. When has God sent one of those horses into your life and you used it well? And what does that say maybe, just maybe, about any difficulties you're encountering now, where you feel like your faith is getting knocked off its horse? What's been your story? And what does it say about the way God operates in your life? So, it's about the horses keep showing up, right? We go through those tough times, whether they're self-imposed or inflicted on us. Times of desolation, when we bring the desolation on ourselves, when the world delivers desolation. And it's sometimes hard to get it together. And the Lord's saying, If you're willing to get on the horse, I'm willing to send one. When have you done it? You were in a tough spiritual spot and you soldiered on, right? Not trying to pretend it didn't happen, not trying to pretend you were on cloud nine, being realistic about it, but also getting back on the horse. When have you done it? What does it say about the way God works in your life? Let us pray.